Here are a few of the luckiest people that have ever lived. Number 7. Frano Selak. Frano Selleck is a Croatian music teacher who managed to escape death 7 times and afterwards won the lottery in 2003. He's been dubbed as the world's luckiest man and the world's luckiest, unluckiest man as well. Let's just start by going through each of the times Selleck was supposed to be dead. Selleck's first brush with death was in January 1962 when he was riding a train through a cold, rainy canyon and the train flipped off the tracks and crashed in a river. Someone pulled Selleck to safety while 17 other unfortunate passengers drowned. Selleck suffered a broken arm and hypothermia. A year later, he was thrown out of a plane on his first and only flight when a door flew open. This time, 19 people died, but he was thrown clear of the crash and landed on a haystack. A haystack? What kind of sorcery is this? 3 years after that, in 1966, he was in a bus that skidded off the road and into a river, drowning 4 passengers. Selleck swam to the shore with only a few cuts and bruises. In 1970, his car caught fire as he was driving and he managed to escape before the fuel tank blew up. 3 years later, in another driving accident, his car engine was doused with hot oil from a malfunctioning fuel pump, causing flames to shoot through the air vents. Selleck's hair was completely singed in this incident, but he was otherwise unharmed. In 1995, he was hit by a bus in Zagreb, but sustained only minor injuries. In 1996, he eluded a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on a mountain curve by swerving into a guardrail, which gave way under the force of his car. Selleck was ejected from the car when the door flew open because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Who does that on a Balkan anyway? And managed to hold onto a tree. He watched as his car plummeted down 300 feet into a gorge. And because all that adrenaline isn't enough for a lifetime, in 2003, 2 days after his 73rd birthday, Selleck won $1,110,000 in the lottery. He purchased 2 houses and a boat with his winnings, but decided to give most of his remaining money away to relatives and friends after deciding to live a frugal lifestyle. He added that people were always telling him he was lucky to have survived so many disasters, but he added, "I always think I was unlucky to have been in them in the first place." But you can't tell people what they don't want to believe. Hey, the glass is always half empty or half full. Number 6. Roy Sullivan. Roy Sullivan was a United States Park Ranger in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. He started working as a ranger in Shenandoah National Park in 1936 and between 1942 and 1977. Sullivan was hit by lightning on 7 different occasions and survived all of them. He was nicknamed as the Human Lightning Conductor and Human Lightning Rod. Sullivan is recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the person struck by lightning more recorded times than any other human being. One of the more interesting stories happened on June 25, 1977, when Sullivan was struck by lightning while fishing in a freshwater pool. The lightning hit the top of his head, set his hair on fire, traveled down, and burnt his chest and stomach. Sullivan turned to his car when something unexpected occurred. A bear approached the pond and tried to steal trout from his fishing line. Sullivan had the strength and courage to strike the bear with a tree branch. He claimed that this was 22nd time he hit a bear with a stick in his lifetime. He was avoided by people later in life because of their fear of being hit by lightning. Unfortunately, he also began to believe that he would somehow attract lightning even if he stood in a crowd of people, and he carried a can of water with him in case his hair was set on fire. On the morning of September 28, 1983, Sullivan died at the age of 71 under mysterious circumstances from a gunshot wound to the head. Number 5. John Lynn. Some people might describe John Lynn as unlucky. In his life so far, he has had a terrifying array of 16 accidents or near misses. Mr. Lynn's mishaps cover a lifetime. When he was born, he was one of 5 children in a farming family and was uncertain whether he would survive. He had underdeveloped lungs and needed steroids and special care. Setting a pattern for later in life, he beat the odds and somehow managed to survive. So far, he's been struck by lightning, been run over by a delivery van, hit by a bus, and almost drowned. Then there was the time a stone propelled by a catapult hit him in the mouth, smashing 8 teeth. And that's just a small part of Calamity John's mishaps. He has now been off work for 32 weeks after falling through an open inspection hatch at work in one of the most serious accidents among his many mishaps during his lifetime. While some might take a vow to never leave the house again after clocking up enough accidents to cost even a cat its 9 lives, Mr. Lin remains determinedly upbeat. Uncertain whether he'll be able to work again, he is firmly of the opinion that he is a very lucky man. Actually, as far as he is concerned, he's the luckiest man alive. He even said that, considering his life, he should be winning the lottery next. Number 4. Melvin Roberts. They say lightning never strikes twice, but try telling that to 61-year-old Melvin Roberts. This South Carolina man has been struck by lightning 10 times. He's still alive and kicking and can tell some stories, I'm sure. The odds of being struck by lightning in any one year in the US is 1 in 700,000. The odds of being struck in your lifetime is 1 in 3,000. Basically, you have very slim chances of getting struck ever, let alone a dozen times. However, it looks like Melvin Roberts has won some sort of lightning lottery. Roberts made headlines in 2011 when a lightning rod struck his watch, the 6th time he was zapped. His wife Martha said he's been hit 4 times since. A single lightning strike is made up of several 100 million volts. I can only begin to imagine what it feels like. And if you've ever been wondering what it feels like, then this guy has some answers for you. Apparently, it feels like being hit by a freight train, then turns your insides completely around, but you won't completely lose control over your body because you can still tell what's around. Melvin said that some of the unusual side effects of being struck by lightning include a loss of taste for days following the strike. He said it doesn't immediately hurt because of the shock, but the blisters can be excruciating. Roberts has scars on his feet and legs and suffers from memory loss, headaches, speech problems, and nerve damage. However, the Guinness World Record says there isn't enough medical evidence to include him on their list. What if he wasn't really ever struck by lightning and he was just passing out from drinking or something? Number 3. Simon Smith. Can you imagine walking down the street, just minding your own business, when all of a sudden, boom, you get hit by a bus? This is pretty much exactly what happened to Simon Smith. Sure, people get hit by buses all the time, but what makes Simon's case so extraordinary is the fact that he got right up and walked right into the bar. Simon Smith said he's lucky to be alive after being struck by a double-decker bus as he was walking. South Central Ambulance Service said they initially misreported Simon's injuries because he appeared to have come out of the crash unscathed because he walked right into a bar. Simon told paramedics that he had been hit by a bus, and they were absolutely convinced that he was just hit by debris from the crash instead of being hit full-on by the bus. It wasn't until camera footage outside the bar showed him getting knocked off his feet from behind and thrown 20 feet by the bus that was out of control. After being thrown through the air, he landed outside the Purple Turtle bar. Simon basically got up and walked right into the bar, I'm guessing for a pint, just to calm his nerves from, getting smashed by a bus and miraculously escaping with only bruises. Number 2. Austin Hatch. Austin Hatch became somewhat of a national hero after surviving not 1, but 2 plane crashes that unfortunately killed his entire family in 2 separate events. 1 in every 3.4 million people worldwide will be in a plane crash that includes at least 1 fatality. MIT statistician Arnold Barnett doesn't even have data for a person who survives 2. The first plane crash happened in 2003, and the crash killed Austin's mother, brother, and sister. Austin's father had remarried, and he was adamant about sticking with his passion for flying, despite the earlier trauma of losing most of his family. Even having gone through the pain and emotional torture of the crash that's haunted most of his childhood, Hatch maintained a remarkably upbeat attitude. Hatch became a talented basketball standout growing up and landed a scholarship on the University of Michigan men's basketball team on June 15, 2011. However, just 9 days after accepting his offer on the same route that killed half his family, Austin, his father, his stepmother, and the family dog Brady smashed into a garage while his dad was trying to land the plane at the Charlevoix, Michigan airport. Only Austin and the dog Brady made it out alive. Austin spent the next 2 years relearning how to breathe, eat, walk and live after surviving another horrific plane crash that killed his father and stepmother this time. After years of arduous recovery, Hatch was able to make a full recovery and join the Wolverines in 2014. Number 1. Vesna Vulovic. Vesna Vulovic was a Serbian flight attendant who holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute, 33,333 feet. On January 26, 1972, an explosion on Yat Flight 367 broke out and caused the plane to break apart while flying over Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic. Vulovic, 22 years old at the time, was a flight attendant on board. She actually wasn't scheduled to be on that flight. She had been mixed up with another flight attendant who was also named Vesna. Vulovic fell approximately 33,333 feet in her free fall from Earth. She suffered a fractured skull, 3 broken vertebrae that left her temporarily paralyzed from the waist down, 2 broken legs. She was in a coma for 27 days. She was found with her head down and another person on top of her. One part of her body with one of her legs was in the plane while her head was out of the plane. A catering trolley was pinned against her spine, and that's what probably kept her body in the plane. Physicists and aviation experts have theorized that she survived because she had been pinned to the rear part of the plane. She was the sole survivor of the accident. The man who found her told her spot on that she was very lucky. The guy was in the German army as a medic during World War II, so he knew how to treat her at the site of the accident. The medic was later identified as Bruno Henke. Vulovic continued working for Yat Airways at a desk job following a full recovery from her injuries. She regained the use of her legs and continued to fly sporadically, even becoming a sort of star in the former Yugoslavia. She claimed she had no fear of flying, which she attributed to her loss of memory of the crash, and she says she even enjoys watching movies with plane crashes. Okay. Here's what's next. If you think you have a bad day, then listen to this story about a Missouri man who spent nearly 17 years in jail until his doppelganger and real perpetrator was discovered. It started when Richard Jones was accused of mugging a woman in a Walmart parking lot in